the day Allah defended His house. In the heart of the Arabian Peninsula stood the Kaaba, the sacred house of Allah, a structure older than history itself. It was built by the Prophet Ibrahim and his son Ismail, peace be upon them both, as a place devoted solely to the worship of Allah alone. Long before tribes divided the land and long before idols were placed around it, the Kaaba was a symbol of Tawheed, a sanctuary made sacred by divine command. Even though the people of Arabia later fell into ignorance and idol worship, the sanctity of the house remained firmly rooted in their hearts. Allah had declared Makkah a secure land, a place where bloodshed was forbidden and where the house would remain under His protection. The tribes of Arabia, despite their differences, honored the Kaaba and respected its status. They traveled to it from distant deserts, not only for worship, but because it represented continuity, lineage, and divine history. It was known among them that this house belonged to Allah, and that no ordinary force could violate its sanctity without consequence. Far to the south, in Yemen, political power rested in the hands of the Abyssinian kingdom. They were people of authority and organized rule, and they governed Yemen through appointed leaders. Among them was Abraha al-Ashram, a man who rose from general to ruler. He was known for his intelligence, discipline, and ambition, but also for a pride that grew unchecked. As governor, he observed the influence of the Kaaba and the way the Arabs' hearts were attached to Mecca, not to Sana'a, the capital under his control. This devotion troubled Abraha deeply. He believed that political power should command religious loyalty, and he resented the fact that the greatest gathering of the Arabs revolved around a house beyond his authority. Seeking to redirect this devotion, Abraha ordered the construction of an enormous church in Sana'a. It was built with great expense and care, adorned in a way meant to inspire awe and submission. He named it Al-Qulays, and openly declared that it would replace the Kaaba as the center of pilgrimage for the Arabs. Abraha sent messengers across the peninsula, commanding the tribes to abandon Makkah and come instead to his church. But the Arabs refused. Their attachment to the house of Ibrahim could not be erased by force or command. When one of them traveled to Sana'a and desecrated the church in defiance, the incident reached Abraha and ignited his fury. His pride was wounded, and his ambition turned into a dangerous resolve. He swore an oath that he would march to Makkah and destroy the Kaaba, believing that once it was gone, the Arabs would have no choice but to turn to him. In his arrogance, he forgot that the Kaaba was not protected by people, nor by walls, but by the Lord of the heavens and the earth. Abraha did not act on impulse alone. He prepared carefully, believing that power lay in numbers and fear. From Yemen, he gathered an army larger than any the Arabs had ever faced. Thousands of soldiers assembled beneath his command, disciplined and armed, marching with confidence born of past victories. At the front of the army were elephants brought from Africa, creatures unfamiliar to the deserts of Arabia. Their size alone was meant to break the spirit of any who stood in their way. The largest among them was named Mahmud, trained to advance upon command and crush anything before him. As the army moved northward, news of their march spread rapidly. Villages emptied, caravans changed course, and tribes withdrew into the desert. None dared confront Abraha's force. To the Arabs, this was not merely an army, but a sign of overwhelming worldly power. Abraha's heart swelled with arrogance as he witnessed fear spread before him. He believed that destiny itself had bowed to his will. When the army reached Ta'if, the tribe of Thaqif came out to meet Abraha. They feared destruction and sought to protect themselves. They told him that the house he sought to destroy was not in their land, but in Makkah, belonging to Quraysh. To secure his favor, they even provided a guide to lead the army to the sacred valley. Abraha accepted, convinced that nothing could stand in his path. Soon, the army camped near Makkah. Abraha's soldiers seized property and livestock from the surrounding areas, including camels belonging to Abdul Muttalib ibn Hashim, the respected elder of Quraysh. Though the people of Makkah were gripped by fear, Abdul Muttalib remained composed. He knew that force could not repel such an army, and that reliance upon Allah was the only refuge left to them. Abdul Muttalib went to meet Abraha, entering his tent with dignity and calm. When Abraha saw him, he was struck by his noble appearance. He expected the leader of Quraysh to plead for the Kaaba, but Abdul Muttalib spoke only of his camels, asking that they be returned. Abraha mocked him, astonished that a man whose sacred house faced destruction would speak of wealth instead. With firm faith, Abdul Muttalib replied that he was the owner of the camels and sought what was his, but that the Kaaba had a Lord who would protect it. These words carried certainty, not defiance. For a moment, Abraha felt a tremor of doubt, but pride quickly silenced it. He ordered the camels returned, yet remained determined to destroy the Kaaba. That night, Abdul Muttalib instructed the people of Quraysh to leave Makkah and seek safety in the surrounding mountains. They could not defend the house with weapons, but they entrusted it fully to Allah. As they departed, Abdul Muttalib stood at the door of the Kaaba and called upon Allah, reminding him of his sanctuary and his promise. The city was left empty. No guards stood watch. No army waited in defense. Only the Kaaba remained, silent beneath the stars, awaiting the decree of its Lord. Abraha rested confidently, unaware that the power he trusted would soon be reduced to nothing by a command from the heavens. When dawn broke over the valley of Makkah, the army of Abraha prepared to advance. The air was still, heavy with an unnatural silence, as if creation itself was holding its breath. Abraha stood confident among his commanders, certain that this day would mark the end of the Kaaba and the submission of Arabia to his will. He gave the order to march, and the drums of war echoed through the valley. Mahmud, the great elephant, was brought forward. The soldiers urged it toward the Kaaba, pulling its reins and striking it to move. But the elephant refused. It knelt upon the ground and would not take a single step forward. They beat it again, shouted commands, and drove it with force, yet it remained still. When they turned it toward Yemen, it rose and walked. When they turned it toward Syria, it moved willingly. But each time they faced it toward the Kaaba, it knelt and refused to advance. Allah had placed his command upon the creature, and no training or force could override it. Confusion spread among the soldiers, but Abraha's pride would not allow retreat. As they struggled with the elephant, the sky above them began to change. From the distance came a sound unfamiliar to the desert, like a rushing wind mixed with sharp cries. The soldiers looked up, shielding their eyes from the rising sun, and saw something approaching from the horizon. Flocks of birds filled the sky, coming in waves from every direction. They were small birds, yet they moved with perfect order, as though guided by an unseen command. Each bird carried stones of hardened clay, as Allah later described in the Quran, stones prepared for punishment. One stone was held in the beak, and two in the claws, small in size but heavy with divine decree. The birds descended upon the army, releasing the stones with precision. Where a stone struck, it destroyed. Flesh tore apart, bodies collapsed, and soldiers fell screaming in terror. Armor melted away, and strength offered no protection. The army that had marched with arrogance was thrown into chaos, fleeing in every direction. Horses reared, men trampled one another, and fear consumed their hearts. Abraha watched as his army disintegrated before his eyes. He turned to flee, but he too was struck. His body began to fall apart, his strength leaving him with every step. The punishment did not come as a single blow, but as a gradual destruction, a humiliation that matched his arrogance. Those who survived fled southward, wounded and broken, carrying the memory of divine punishment with them. Allah reduced them, as he revealed later, to like eaten straw, crushed and scattered. Their plan was destroyed completely, and their power vanished in a single morning. Not a stone of the Kaaba was touched. The house stood untouched, protected not by men or weapons, but by the will of its Lord. From the mountains surrounding Mecca, the people of Quraysh watched in awe and fear. They returned to the city after the army had vanished, knowing with certainty that Allah had defended his house. What Abraha sought to destroy became a sign for all of Arabia, a reminder that the sanctity of the Kaaba was not a matter of tradition alone, but a reality guarded by divine power. The remnants of Abraha's army crawled back toward Yemen, carrying bodies broken by punishment and hearts crushed by fear. Abraha himself was among them, no longer a ruler commanding armies, but a defeated man barely clinging to life. With every mile he traveled, his body decayed further, his strength melting away as a sign of Allah's justice. By the time he reached Sana'a, the city he once ruled with arrogance, he was nothing but a shadow of his former self. Soon after, he died in humiliation, his ambition erased, his name remembered only as a warning. The Kaaba remained standing, untouched and honored. The people of Makkah returned to their homes with renewed certainty that this house was under divine protection. Though they still lived in a time of ignorance, the event of the elephant settled firmly in their hearts. It became a reference point in their history, a year they would never forget. They named it the Year of the Elephant, a year when Allah displayed his power openly to the people of Arabia. In that same year, Allah decreed a far greater event than the destruction of an army. In the sacred city of Makkah, Muhammad ibn Abdullah, peace be upon him, was born. He was born into the very family entrusted with the care of the Kaaba, a sign that Allah's protection of his house was tied to a greater mission yet to unfold. Though the people did not yet know it, the child born that year would one day cleanse the Kaaba of idols and restore it to the worship of Allah alone. Years later, when Muhammad, peace be upon him, received revelation, Allah reminded him and the believers of that historic event. A short chapter was revealed, Surja El-Fil, preserving the memory of that day forever in the Quran. Allah asked a powerful question, one that required no answer, only reflection. Had they not seen how their Lord dealt with the companions of the elephant? Had he not made their plot go astray? Allah described how he sent upon them birds in flocks, striking them with stones of hardened clay, and made them like eaten straw. With these verses, Allah taught the believers that worldly power means nothing before divine command. Armies, weapons, and pride collapse instantly when Allah wills, while his sanctuaries remain secure under his protection. The story of the elephant is not merely history. It is a lesson engraved in revelation. It teaches that arrogance before Allah leads only to destruction, that reliance upon Him brings safety, and that His promises are never broken. The Kaaba did not need defenders that day because its Lord was sufficient. When Islam later spread across Arabia, the believers understood this event more clearly. They saw how Allah prepared the land for the final messenger, peace be upon him, removing threats and establishing signs long before revelation descended. The protection of the Kaaba was part of a divine plan that unfolded across generations. Thus, the Day of the Elephant remains a reminder for every generation. Allah is the guardian of His religion, the protector of His sanctuaries, and the one whose will none can resist. Those who raise their hands against what Allah has made sacred raise them only against their own destruction, and those who place their trust in Him find that He is enough.